I'm Rob,
And I'm Sandy.
and this is the Carter Chronicles. Today we are going to show you some parts of our trip in Alaska that took us up north, way up north, above the Arctic Circle North. Many of you are probably wondering, why would you want to drive above the Arctic Circle?
And to those people, I would say, why wouldn't you? To be able to drive along the famous Dalton Highway, aka the Haul Road, the one featured on the show Ice Road Truckers, see the Alaskan pipeline, visit parts of Alaska that most don't ever get to see, and be able to see gates of the Arctic National Park, that was enough for me. So on our trip to Alaska in June of 2018, we rented a vehicle out of Fairbanks and made our way up north.
Here we are on the Elliott Highway on our way up to Living Good to take the Dalton Highway up to Coldfoot and Wiseman. And if you get motion sickness, do not watch this. I'm trying to keep it steady. But this is the good road, and I just wanted to show how much fun we are having.
Let's stop right there for a minute. Unless you bring your own vehicle, if you plan to drive the Dalton Highway, you cannot take a regular rental vehicle. It's not allowed. Plus, you probably wouldn't get too far. This is a road that was made specifically for trucks to use during the installation of the pipeline.
Here's our fearless driver.
Hey, hey, hey.
Here's the Dalton.
The Carters are driving down the Dalton Highway on their way back to Fairbanks.
And that has been our commentary the entire time. He feels like he's...
The road is narrow with soft shoulders, high embankments, and steep hills. There are some paved areas, but there are long stretches of gravel surface with sharp rocks, potholes, and washboard surfaces. Depending on the weather, you may be dealing with clouds of dust or slick mud.
The Dalton was not accessible in its entirety to the public until 1994. And even now, it is primarily used for big trucks going to and from Prudhoe Bay. Also, there are no medical facilities for 500 miles, and gas is only available at 3 mileposts, milepost 56, 175, and 414.
That being said, we had to get a rental vehicle that was four-wheel drive, had full-size spare tires, gas containers, and a CB radio, because there is no cell service in this area. So if you get stranded, truckers are pretty much your only hope on Channel 19. We reserved our rental through Alaska Auto Rental in Fairbanks.
And just so you're aware, the types of rental vehicles that are allowed to drive in areas like the Dalton Highway are very expensive to rent. This little SUV ran us $500 a day, so we only rented it for one day to save money.
It's hard to predict travel time on the Dalton since you cannot drive at a fast pace, but there is a chart you can use to estimate your travel time on the BLM website. Like we said, we only had our rental car for 24 hours, so we found this information very helpful.
So here's a little bit of our 24 hours driving the Dalton.
The Dalton Highway begins in Living Good, about 84 miles north of Fairbanks, and ends in Dead Horse, Alaska, 414 miles later at Prudhoe Bay. The highway was named after James Dalton, an Arctic engineering expert who was involved with early oil exploration on the North Slope. To access the Dalton from Fairbanks, you take the Elliott Highway, which is an experience in and of itself.
All along the Dalton, you will see the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, or the Alaska Pipeline. It is one of the world's largest pipeline systems with 800 miles of 48-inch diameter pipeline that moves crude oil from Prudhoe Bay to Valdez. It crosses over 3 mountain ranges and more than 500 rivers and streams, and cost $8 billion to construct way back in 1977.
The Yukon River winds 2,000 miles from Canada to the Bering Sea. The bridge on the Dalton Highway, known as the E.L. Patton Bridge, is the only bridge crossing over the Yukon River in Alaska. The Bureau of Land Management's Yukon Crossing Visitor Contact Station is located just north of the bridge.
One of my favorite parts of the road were the Rollercoaster Hills. These the Rollercoaster Hills?
I think these might be the Rollercoaster Hills.
The Carters are driving up and down the roller coaster hills on the Dalton Highway.
You're awesome.
Which were a series of steep hills named by truckers in the early years of the pipeline construction. We're hydroplaning on gravel and I totally have no control right now.
That's what makes life fun.
The Carter's driver
There's
has
the
lost
pipeline to the
all
left.
control.
Rob's
of the
talking.
vehicle.
You calling me the pipeline?
No. Not even gonna touch that. The pipeline kind of follows this road the whole way. Sometimes it's buried, sometimes it's above ground. Just depends on where you're at.
Other parts of these roller coaster hills are named Sand Hill, Mackey Hill, Beaver Slide, and Gobbler's Knob.
The Arctic Circle is an imaginary line encircling the Earth at a latitude where the sun does not set on summer solstice or rise on winter solstice. It is here that you can grab a picture with the famous Arctic Circle sign and maybe even leave your mark on the back of the sign.
There is a visitor center that is a partnership between the Bureau of Land Management and the National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The name of this center is called the Arctic Interagency Visitor Center. It is here that you can get information about the Arctic region and get your passport stamp for gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve. You can also get a certificate that you have crossed the Arctic Circle.
Coldfoot Camp was founded in 1898. It was originally called Slate Creek, but the name was changed to Coldfoot because prospectors would get that far north, get cold feet, and then turn back. During the 1970s, it became a camp for workers on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. As one of the only 3 spots to get gas on the Dalton, it is the most northern truck stop in the world.
Here at the Truckers Cafe, it is open year-round, and we ate here on our way back down the Fairbanks. It was one of my favorite stops in Alaska. Only truckers can order off the menu here, but the rest of us enjoyed an amazing breakfast buffet that included your typical breakfast foods like fresh fruit, a yogurt bar, homemade pastries, and even crispy and chewy bacon. It was like an oasis in the middle of nowhere, and I still have dreams about the cherry almond scones and the raspberry pancakes from the Truckers Cafe.
Just after crossing the Middle Fork Koyukuk Bridge, turn to the west and go about 3 miles to the historic village of Wiseman. It was established in 1907. This is where we spent the night at the Boreal Lodge.
Now, the Boreal Lodge is not a 5-star hotel by any stretch of the imagination. It is off the grid lodging that offers everything you need to stay in Alaska above the Arctic Circle. For about $200 a night, we got camp-style beds and a shared bathroom. A community kitchen is also provided, in which we prepared a dry soup mix that we brought with us. We also made peanut butter and jelly on crackers for dinner that night.
Sukpak Mountain is a massive chunk of rock rising 4,459 feet. Sukpak is an Inuit Eskimo word meaning marten deadfall. In summertime, it glows with the evening sun. These pictures were taken around 10:30 p.m. on June 14th, about a week before the summer solstice.
We were able to visit another national park on our trip above the Arctic Circle. Gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve was a name of a park given by Robert Marshall, who is a famous wilderness advocate. He called the 2 peaks in the park, Frigid Crags and Boreal Mountain, the gates from Alaska's central Brooks Range into the far North Arctic. This park has no signs, no facilities, no roads, and no trails. Hiking into the park from the Dalton Highway is possible, but very limited due to the river crossings. Here we are in front of the Endicott Mountains of the Brooks Range, located in the gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve. The ground in this area was very different, very spongy and made up of dwarf birch, moss, and lichens.
Nice.
Our intention was to drive to Adigan Pass at milepost 244 to cross the Continental Divide, but we decided we should call it a day, and we drove back to Wiseman for the night. We found out the next morning at the Truckers Cafe that a snowstorm had hit Adigan Pass the previous night, and semis and cars had run off the road and were stranded. So even in June, weather conditions can be treacherous on the Dalton.
Although there is wildlife throughout all areas of Alaska, in our 24-hour journey, we only saw one moose, a few rabbits, and a lynx. Now, seeing a lynx in the wild was really worth the trip. Very cool, though.
We hope you enjoyed seeing this part of Alaska that not very many people get to visit. Driving the Dalton was definitely a different kind of experience for us. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section.
Until next time, bye!
We dedicate this Alaska travel series to the memory of my dad, Charlie Dyson, who was the one who taught me a love for the outdoors and was my original inspiration to travel to Alaska. Thanks, Dad.